Hey guys, tactical bug out bags. You're doing it wrong. So there's a lot of myths and misconceptions with bug out bags. So today I'm going to kind of cover that, and I'm going to start with two of the biggest misconceptions. A, if something happens, you're going to walk off into the wilderness and survive indefinitely. B, if something happens, you're going to walk home. Well, no, you're probably not. So I'm going to talk about that, some historical examples, some scenarios, and then I'm going to close out today with why I think this whole thought process is backwards and what you can do to fix it. So this whole scenario with I'm gonna walk off into the wilderness and survive indefinitely if something happens is just asinine. I mean, it's so asinine. You're not. I mean, there are some historical examples of people that, ended up in bad situations and survived. And they usually survived a very miserable existence. And for every one that survived, there were 10 that died. It's a fact of life. I mean, it's just not a very common occurrence for somebody to end up in a bad situation, stranded out in the wilderness, and survive. And those that do, it was an excruciating, miserable experience. And even when we look back to, we have this misconception that with the Lewis and Clark expedition, it was two guys and an Indian scout that strapped on backpacks and walked the Pacific Ocean. No, that's not how that worked at all. In any history book ever, that is not how that went. That was two guys leading an expedition that started with 40 people and a bunch of flat-bottom boats on a river loaded with supplies. That's how that started. And then eventually they got onto horseback with mules and but it was not two dudes and an Indian scout just walking to the Pacific Ocean. The fur trappers and the buffalo hunters, that was, once again, not some dude that strapped on a backpack and went bird hunting for the winter. Even if you eliminate the parties of guys that went out and had wagons and pack mules and everything else, take the single guy that went out by himself. He had a horse and he had a bunch of pack mules. And when I say mules, plural, more than one. It's not a thing that ever happened. It wasn't. And then, if you look at the historical examples, there was a fur trapper. I cannot remember his name right now, but he got mauled by a bear and basically left to die by the rest of his party. And he survived for about 2 or 3 months, and he basically crawled to the nearest army fort. He survived by pulling the bark off of dead trees and then laying in the tree so the maggots would eat the dead flesh off of his wounds. Okay? This is not the little picture perfect scenario that most people have in their heads. Then you roll over to the whole I'm gonna walk home scenario. You're not. You're just not. The only example that I can think of off the top of my head where this was kind of somewhat halfway a thing was the ice storm that hit Atlanta in 2012. It was somewhere around there. Might have been 2013, I'm not sure. But yeah, there were people that actually did abandon their vehicles, which most people aren't going to do, because unless you're a homeowner, that's probably your single biggest investment is your vehicle. something you're not probably going to just abandon willy-nilly. But ice storm that hit Atlanta, there were people that did abandon their vehicles on the interstate. And they walked to the nearest hotel room. Not home, to the nearest hotel room. So, generally speaking, that was right off the interstate. They could probably see it from their car, which is probably why they left their car to go to the hotel. So, if you look at examples of that, Hurricane Katrina, and when I say Hurricane Katrina, I'm not going off on a tangent on this one. Hurricane Katrina did not hit New Orleans, it hit Mississippi. It's a whole other story. But in Mississippi, after Katrina came through, you could barely walk 2 feet down a road without having to climb across a pine tree. So you couldn't drive home because of the pine trees. The average person walks 2 miles an hour. 2. That's with no pine trees in the way. So if you have pine trees in the way, how long is it going to take you to walk home? Just saying. Just saying. You're probably not. Any example, come up with anything, whatever scenario, whatever is going to prevent you from driving home is probably going to prevent you from walking home. And if you do try to walk home, it's probably a really, really bad idea. So, my biggest problem with all of this is the thought process. And to me, people that approach these types of scenarios from that aspect of I'll either survive indefinitely or I'm going to walk home or whatever the case might be are approaching the situation completely backwards. And they're thinking long term. They're thinking about, I've got a flint steel. I've got a way to start fire for, years. Well, that's cool. How are you going to clip your fingernails? I'm just saying. How often do you clip your fingernails on a normal basis? But the people that think along those lines, I've got this flint steel. I've never seen a video, a blog post, anything like that with a dude that's talking about that aspect that has fingernail clippers in his bug out bag. So cool, you can start a fire. How are you going to take care of yourself? On a basic level. So it's kind of my issue with that thought process. People that think along those lines forget the basics. So I just did a video on the concept of bug out bags. It's supposed to be an extension of your home where you have all of your stuff. And I'm going to go back to that one. Because if you think along those lines, how am I going to survive tomorrow? Not next week, not next month, not next year. How am I going to survive tomorrow? Start there. Okay. And then after that, how am I going to survive the next day? And how much of that can I build on with my bug out bag? If I start with what I need tomorrow, and then I can add what I need the next day and what I need the next day after that, you're going to be far better off. So, this is the point where I want to start to ramble. It's just kind of my thoughts on it. Start with the basics. Please, please, please start with the basics. Anyway, till next time.